Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So today's video is basically something that I just started thinking about a few days ago. When I first saw this tweet by a gentleman named Tim Spencer, he is a level director at TT Games. TT Games makes the Lego games, and last year, basically, they tweeted this. I didn't necessarily pay attention to this tweet. We were talking raid stuff back then. I was trying to get my ego bare, so I was really, a little just like, well, whatever. Some people actually shared this tweet with me and talked about me trying to make a video about it, but man, my head was in a different space then. But the tweet says, I love the idea of a single-player narrative-driven spin-off of the Division game, focusing on an agent trying to get home to their family after being sent to NYC during the Shade blackout from the fall of DC. So TLOU times the Division. So basically, The Last of Us meets the Division type game. Single player narrative and all that. Now, I've been thinking about this, tweet for a while saying, we need to kind of talk about this. And then all of a sudden, bam, on my Reddit feed, this is already sparking a conversation. I even had to go back and drive down to the article written by Forbes that actually alluded to this. Paul Tassi is somebody who writes about, the Division, and he writes about Destiny and stuff. And he talked about this and saying, this was something that was floated and all of that. Now, if you look at this, there is a sense of people who actually love these kinds of games. If you even Paul Tassi himself, I'm not saying he is the person that will be the general, measuring factor of many gamers, but many factors, right? Like games like Assassin's Creed, Red Dead, Spider-Man, God of War, and if you think about it, it's because these games do have that single player element. So how can the Division actually tap into this market? One, I think they can use it as kind of a bridge gap between the Division 2 at the end of its life into the Division 3 if they're going to do a Division 3. I think they should. I think this single player narrative game should not be called the Division 3 though. I think it should be called some game that can bring in new people in the gaming community as a whole. I think it should have a difference. It should be RPG in a sense, but it should have what these games like Uncharted do have, which is a more realistic style. So the shooting will be very realistic. It won't be like we shooting a bunch of 1 zillion rounds into Juggernaut NPCs. No. It'll be basically something where it's a run and gun style thing, cover based, action packed, even melee combat. Many of you may say melee combat, isn't that just using your gun to hit somebody? No, not the weird melee combat that we have in the MMO game. I'm talking about combat sequence and interactions that even Massive, I think, may have. Now, if you think about, or if you remember the early teases of the Division game, there was, a slight scenario where they actually had some kind of a stealth mechanic where somebody actually crept up to a bad guy and actually stealth grabbed them and actually, took them out. They have those systems in place and they can actually resurrect them and bring them into this game where the game could have a stealth system. The game could have, all the threat mechanics and everything that goes into it. And I think if they were to use New York and DC as this level designer or level director suggested, it will be something that will work better in regarding production and perhaps scale down production time because they already have some really good scans of New York City, of Washington, DC at their, fingertips. There are so many ways they can go about it. The story can be driven in the sense that you can play an agent story and they can introduce a lot of story elements that are behind the scene that we basically see, very little glimpses of in the MMO side of the Division game. If you also think about it, the Division does have a lot of, very solid literature. I mean, it's not too many, but the based and grounded nature of the literature that's available in terms of comics and books are actually pretty good. In my opinion, I think they've written those stories very well, and they have a specific level and aspect to what a narrative can actually bring for players. I think if they put this kind of game out, it's definitely going to appeal to a segment of the audience. They don't have to call it the Division, but they can call it a Division story. They can call it some name, and then on the bottom, they write a Division story of it. I know many Division agents will most likely engage in a game like that. Sure, it's going to not have the co-op aspect of things, but to be honest, we Division players sometimes just like to sit down and chill and play a game. And if we can play a Division game that is not always having to suffer from balance issues, I think we're probably going to enjoy and appreciate that. I mean, is anybody else thinking this? I know some people are like, well, I don't really care for games like that. That's fine. But many of us that play the Division usually take our breaks in games of that nature. If we had a game that had very different mechanics to all of this and we can go in there, then man, that's definitely something that we can see. We can even have more villains of different kinds to deal with in different areas that we explore and that we go to. And you can even tie specific landmarks that are already in the Division 1 and 2 games, into this narrative where, this agent is trying to kind of maybe track their way from point A to point B in the story and in the journey. And the agent has to make their way through very significant locations in the Division 1 and Division 2 lore, the post office base of operations, the, resistance area, the Piers North or something. And then even, DC, the White House, and all these other places that have now been landmarked with the Division game. I think this idea will be solid. And I think with the narrative team that they have in Massive and the creative team, they can get on something like this. Because if you guys remember, when the hardcore mode was actually, released in its beta form, the studio said that we do have a team of people that have been able to put something like this together. They've had this idea and they were excited to bring it forth. And they even said it wasn't taken away from any development resources. So Massive's 400 employee juggernaut probably will have a team of people that can start to birth this idea in place. They can maybe have the resources to start putting these ideas together and shaping it. In fact, who knows if this is not already something that may be floating, among the ranks, and we don't know how they're going to put it. So hopefully we see something of this nature. I think it will be really nice. I know it sounds like more Division, but to be honest, I really don't care. I'll play more Division if it's good. That's just my deal. And I hope to, see that this franchise gets healthy and continues down the road. It is still very young compared to a lot of other established franchises and others that are actually, in the same competitive space as a Division. It is still a baby, and I think it will need a little bit more support to grow, and hopefully the development team does not throw it out in the corner and they continue to support it, because as long as they continue supporting it and they have the intention to make it good and make it a better game, I feel like there are people that are going to continue to rally around it. So that's basically my video. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this. I guess that's it for me. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.